All right, so on this episode of the Fab Forums, we're going to revisit the shop. We're going to look at whether the spray foam insulation was worth the extra cost or not. Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. So, as you guys know, I built this place, or may not know, I don't know. Anyway, this is my shop at my house. I built this probably about 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago, and I decided to spray the entire thing with closed cell spray foam insulation. One of the things I didn't want to happen was I didn't want it to be so hot in there that I didn't want to work. I didn't want any excuses not to work, and so I felt like the insulation would be one of those things. We got a nice, moderately warm day today here in South Carolina. It's about, I don't know, I think 2 o'clock. And what I've got is a thermometer inside that we're gonna go look at in just a second. And it's basically just telling us what the ambient temperature inside is, and then we'll bring that outside and kind of see the difference. I don't have AC in this thing, or heat. Actually, I do have a little jet heater that I use in the wintertime, but no AC yet. And so we're gonna kind of see the contrast between temperatures in this building. Other than me just stepping inside to grab the camera, the doors haven't been open, and so what it is what it is. So let's go take a look. What are you doing, Weezer? Click the lights on so we can kind of see what's going on. So for some that may not know, this is the shop. It's 48 by 80, and it's just my little home shop. It's kind of what I work out of, film videos out of, do some fabrication in here. Wanted to kind of build some office slash living space, and the shop is still yet to be finished. I've been kind of slack as far as it goes. Been working on a lot of other stuff, including that thing. So all of it is spray foam, like I said, closed cell, probably 3 to 4 inches of thickness in most places. And then what I did is I painted the ceiling black, mainly for filming purposes. And I left the walls yellow for now because I'm gonna cover them up. And it's been 2 years, still haven't covered them up, but that's the plans. I'm gonna cover all that up. Yeah, I don't know what, 3 inches of concrete. I'm trying to think of all the stuff that would matter potentially. A little teaser for you normal viewers. So if I were to look at things that I felt like are a waste of energy or don't insulate very well, I would say these doors are one of them. They're just fiberglass doors. When the sun's kind of beating on them, they will kind of be warm to the touch on the inside, which is transferring heat through, obviously. And then the other thing is that there's like an opening. You can't see it, but on the other side of that roll, there's an opening that's, you know, a couple inches, so air and moisture can kind of get in and out depending on what I'm doing, along with the side pieces, so they don't seal very well over here. Got 3 of those doors, so I've got 2 10 by 10s, one here and one on the back, and then there's, I think, an 8 by 8 in here, and there's an 8 by 8 over there. So when I talk about finishing the rest of the shop, I'm kind of talking about, you know, some kind of tin like this over all the yellow, or as you can see over here, I've got some wood inside here, sheetrock, more wood. So that's kind of the idea with the whole shop, is in some form or fashion, I'm gonna cover all of the foam that's yellow. But what I'm going to do is really not what this video is about. This video is about whether this foam works or not, whether it's worth the money or not. So let's see what the temperature is in here. If I had to guess, I'm gonna say probably mid to high 70s. So yeah, 79 degrees in here right now. 72% relative humidity. So let's talk about humidity first thing. The one thing I found out about this spray foam, especially because I didn't leave any kind of vents in here, and there's no ridge vent, there's no exhaust fans, there's nothing that can kind of vent out any humidity that might be in here. It definitely will accumulate a ton of humidity, especially here in the South. If you were to open up one of these doors, you let a bunch of that warm, humid air in, then you shut the door and it's so much cooler in here, all that air is going to condense on the walls, the ceiling, on the cars, everywhere else, and it can cause a pretty big problem. So that was the first thing I found that was an issue with the foam, at least the way that I did it, not having any vents. I felt like if I was going to spend the money on the foam, I didn't want any way for anything to escape, right? One of the things I did to combat that is a dehumidifier. So this one is showing that it's 72% humidity in here, which is, I'm thinking is what the other one said. And this thing's just set where I can, so I've got it set now to kick on at 70, maybe it was 75 before I pushed it, but it'll kick on at 75% humidity, and it basically just pulls all the moisture out of the shop, or at least a good portion of the moisture. And it doesn't let it get overwhelmingly moist in here. You know, when it's raining, that thing basically stays on constantly, just trying to filter out all the moisture. And the way I've got that one set up, it just pipes it right outside, so it doesn't have. That one's actually got a canister that'll hold the water. You have to kind of empty it. I've set it up to where it just pumps it right outside, and so it kind of does its thing automatically all the time. Now, when you're working with a lot of bare metal, obviously moisture can be a problem, and I don't have any problems with it in here anymore ever since putting that thing up. So I guess if there was a bad thing to spray foam, the way that I did it, that would be it, moisture. I guess another negative that I kind of found to having the spray foam would be the echo. So got a pretty bad echo in here still, even though there's all kinds of stuff. Which seems a little counterintuitive, because you'd think that foam would kind of kill the echo in here a little bit, but it doesn't, mainly because it's closed cell, so it's really hard. But I think even if it was open cell, usually on open cell, the outer layer of the foam has kind of a hard shell to it, and that noise is just going to echo around. I've got some ideas of how to combat that in the future with some sound panels and that sort of thing, but yeah, it's one of those things that still hasn't been done. Trying to think of other potential negatives. So what I did on mine is all the conduit for the power was put in before they sprayed the foam, except for some stuff that I've added afterwards. And then I just went in here and kind of hand foamed it for now. But if there was a negative to it, it's that now that I have to go through here and chisel out the foam to put stringers in order to hang the sheet metal, which is not really that big of a deal, but it is something that I have to do, I guess. I mean, it's not really that hard to kind of chisel this stuff off. It is kind of messy though. I guess while we talk, I can go ahead and set this thermometer outside and we can kind of see the temperature difference. I will tell you, just from experience, usually you see about a 20-degree difference from outside to inside. Come out here. I'll just set this thing in the shade right there, and we'll let it warm up, see what it comes up to. I guess we could talk about some of the potential negatives of foam that kind of arose when I first talked about spraying this entire place. Mainly because what I do in here is fabrication. One of the big concerns was fire. You know, you're welding, you got whatever, you got some fire in here. You know, people were afraid I was gonna light the walls on fire and then the whole place would go up like a match. I did address this in some videos when I first did it. I actually did some testing to see how flammable this foam was myself. And what I basically found is it is almost not flammable at all. Now, I don't know if they add stuff to it or how that works, but a welder, I literally welded right on top of the foam, like put a piece of steel right next to it, and MIG welded, splatter flying everywhere, never would catch on fire. Even to where I was lighting it with a torch. I'd actually light the foam on fire with a torch, and as soon as you move the torch away, the flame would go out. So I had no really fear of it just combusting into flames and turning into a big match. That's not to say that it's 100% flame retardant. You know, I guess if the right scenario happened, it may not burn on its own, but if there was an accelerant in here and you got it hot enough, I would guess that it would probably help burn. So, you know, if there was a fire in here, it could it could be an issue. But I mean, you could say the same thing about wood and a lot of things that you would build a shop out of. So no fear of fire, especially once I get the walls covered in tin. So I guess what we need to get into is whether it's worth it or not. So if it sticks to this 20-degree rule that I usually find in here, when we go back outside, I feel like the temperature is gonna be close to 100, mid to high 90s, I would guess. And I think what attributes to the temperature difference so much, obviously the foam does a really good job from keeping outside heat coming in. You know, the roof gets hot from the sun, the walls get really hot from the sun. It doesn't let it transfer through that foam into the shop. But that alone, I don't think is why it stays so cool in here. I think it's partly because of the concrete. So the concrete itself stays very cool, especially overnight, right? I mean, it's touching the dirt as well, which is what, I don't know, I think if you go deep enough, the dirt is, 56 degrees, 60 degrees or something like that. So that concrete is basically absorbing that coolness right through it into the shop. It's nice and cool. I mean, the dog always loves it in here. It's always nice and cool on the floor. So I think that's partly what keeps this place so cool during the day. My plans are to eventually put central heat and air in this place. And what's gonna be nice once I do that is that I could pretty much leave it on all the time and not have to worry about it, driving up the electrical bill in this place a lot, because especially if I have it set at like, say, 77 as far as cooling, and then, put a kind of a low heat on it where it's just a comfortable environment in here. And then if I want to, when I come out here to work, I can roll it down or up depending on what it is I feel like I need. Really just kind of keep it from going over a certain amount or under a certain amount. I don't feel like it would run much. When it would kick on, it would do its job, it would kick back off, and the insulation itself will hold it. So now I guess the million-dollar question is the money that's associated with the foam in this place worth what I paid? So I will say that when I put this in, I was kind of based on, talking to some people and getting not really official quotes, but just basically talking to people that had it done and kind of doing a little bit of research on what it was gonna cost to fill this entire space with foam. It was looking like it was going to cost me anywhere between $15,000 and $20,000 just for the foam, which is a crazy number if you think about it at the surface. But if you kind of dig deep a little bit into it, really it's not that crazy, considering I've worked in this place for 2.5 years. It's always very comfortable in here, and I have no central heat and air. If you wanted to basically if you wanted to heat and cool this place without the foam, I don't even know that you could do it, to be honest with you. It'd be so hot in here without this foam. I mean, this steel would just transfer heat right through it. My old shop that I had this problem where it could be 90 degrees outside, it'd be 115 degrees in the shop. You just couldn't work in there. Even after the sun went down, it'd be cooler outside than it would be in the shop. I had to work in the morning, otherwise I couldn't work in the summertime. So I mean, if you think about the money cost, even if you had put heat and air in here without the foam, you'd have a $300 a month, power bill, I would think, just for the shop, and it still wouldn't be as comfortable as it probably is with the foam with no central heat and air. So I guess if you think about it in just that, in those terms right there, I mean, it's kind of invaluable, right? You couldn't really work out here without it, regardless of what kind of heating and air you had. And so, in that aspect, it's you have to have it almost. Now, you could have done other things in here. I think they've got like a standard insulation that they use in steel buildings, which works okay. It's not as good as foam though. I think the R value on this stuff, and now don't quote me on this because I can't remember, but I'm thinking it's like 5 or 7 R value per inch. And I've got about 4 inches of foam everywhere in here, some a little thicker than others. And so, I mean, it insulates probably better than my house does as far as the walls themselves. Now the doors and all that stuff doesn't work very well. And, you know, if I were to trim them out, they'd probably work a little better. Matter of fact, let me show you. So from this angle, you can actually see a little better. You can actually see some light coming through the top of that door. And that's what I was talking about. So hot air, cold air, whatever, can just kind of blow over that door. And yeah, it's not the greatest. I've thought about several things I could do to these doors that would help insulate it a little bit better. Just haven't got to it yet. One of the things I could do is put basically a brush up there. So they make these long door brushes. It's got like tines that would hang out, would touch the rollers. It would keep cold or hot air from kind of blowing through. And then as you roll the door up, you know, it can kind of do its thing on that brush. The other thing I thought about doing too is using like a bed liner or like a lizard skin, raptor coating. There's a bunch of them out there, and spray the inside of this door. And it's like a rubberized coating. It would help with a lot of that heat transfer, and also would help with the noise. You know, you slam a door, those doors kind of rattle a little bit, make a little bit of noise. Not really a big deal to me because it is a shop, but it would take a lot of that out as well. So one of the other things I think that people fail to consider when it comes to whether the cost of doing something like this is worth it or not is they don't think long enough. They think in the short term, man, it's a big check, it's a big chunk of money. But they don't consider the cost of comfort over the long term, say 20 years, 15, 20 years, right? Or however long this building lasts. It may last longer than that, I don't know. It should. So there's that cost of comfort. Like I said, if I don't want to come down here and work because it's not comfortable, then that's affecting me in other ways. Things aren't getting done. You know, I can't make money potentially if you're trying to run a business out of something like this. And then you have the cost of energy. So the cost to heat it or cool it, depending on what you have. I mean, even kerosene in the winter costs money. The less I have to spend on kerosene, the more that the foam pays for itself. So if something like this costs 20 grand to spray and it pays for itself over 20 years, you're talking $1,000 a year. It's a little easier to see how it could pay for itself, considering, you know, if I had a $200 or $300 a month power bill in this place, trying to heat and cool it, I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer. It pays for itself instantly over time. Is that even a thing? All right, so it's been like 10 minutes. Let's go see what the temperature is outside. So we're already up to 88 and a half. 88 and a half degrees in the shade. Kind of let it sit for a little bit. See, that's probably pretty close today. I would guess it's probably 90 degrees. And so what is that, 10 degree difference so far? So, and it feels, the thing that's awesome too is when you cool a space or you make a space 10, 15 degrees cooler than it is outside, the second you open the door and come inside, it feels air conditioned. I have a ton of people come in here and they're like, man, you got this place climate controlled? And I guess essentially I do have it climate controlled, but no mechanical system does it. All right, so yeah, spray foam insulation in your shop. Is it worth the money or not? I think it's worth the money tenfold, 10 times over again. I mean, obviously I probably couldn't afford that if I was having to pay 10 times what I paid or what it cost, but I think it's definitely worth it. I love every time I come in here and it feels nice and cool, despite how hot it is outside. I'm so glad that I went through and paid for the extra spray foam. Didn't kind of cheap out on the insulation, you know, didn't go with the cheap stuff they give you or try to put insulation board up or any of that kind of stuff. The one thing I will tell you too is spray foam insulation made this building at least twice as strong as it was. I mean, that stuff is like concrete basically. It's hard foam, it's sprayed in there in every crevice. It's, you know, it's got a hold of every, you know, tube that's kind of makes this whole structure up. It sticks to the walls. I mean, it is solid. Before we put the spray foam up, you know, you could kind of move the walls You know, you can kind of push on those panels and they would move. Not anymore. They don't move. You can't move them. The other awesome thing that I was kind of considering too was potential leaks. You know, these buildings are put up with barn tin and they use a screw with a gasket seal around it. And a lot of times over time, they'll start to leak and whatnot. And with the closed cell, you know, that stuff kind of swells right up around every little nook and cranny. And so if that gasket were to leak, it couldn't go anywhere. That closed cell is not going to absorb it, which I think the open cell would, and you wouldn't want to do that. But the closed cell won't absorb it. It's not open cell, it's closed, and so it's not like a sponge. It's like a hard, solid piece of foam that's not going to absorb that water. And so this whole building is sealed up, regardless really of what the screws do. So that was another piece of mine that I really liked about the idea of putting this stuff in there. It was kind of waterproofing it from the inside. So I guess there you go. My take on the spray foam. It's been 2 years. I've had plenty of time to kind of live in it, work in it, let it marinate a little bit and make sure that I knew how I felt about it before I made a review video on it. And I say 100% worth it. You know, if I could afford it, I'd pay 10 times what it cost me to do it. It's been a really good investment now. I just got to focus on getting it covered up so you don't see it. I will tell you this. I know some other guys online that I've kind of follow that have done spray foam in their shops. And one thing they did was they painted the entire thing with black paint. I think UV will kind of break this stuff down over time. And so covering up with some kind of paint or something is definitely something you want to do. And spraying the whole thing black would have been a lot easier than me trying to put tin on the walls. And it all black actually looks really, really well on some of the other videos that I've seen of people that have shops that are similar to this. All right, so let's step outside, kind of look at that temperature gauge one last time, and we'll conclude this little review of whether I feel like spray foam insulation is worth the money or not. And I definitely give it a 100% thumbs up. So yeah, what does that say? 97, 98, still climbing. So yeah, is it worth it? You're damn right it's worth it.